fans who understood the system, knew what to do to pay for tickets at a price they were willing to pay, whether that was $100, whether it was $1,000. But fans also understood that the majority of people going through the system were up for exploitative tactics where they would feel like the only choice they had was the $1,000 ticket, and that it wouldn't be maybe so obvious upon first glance that there were face value tickets available, and that they'd be immediately drawn to the dynamic pricing tickets. So you saw fans that maybe had never gone through Ticketmaster before, or parents who have never gone through Ticketmaster trying to buy for their children, ending up paying these atrocious prices because they didn't have the knowledge that the diehard fans did of like, no, like here's how you can filter and sort and find the seats that aren't going to be an outrageous price. So on a few different levels, it made that tour specifically so exclusive and so gatekeepy, which is kind of gross.
Yeah.
Especially for an artist who is like, treat people with kindness
yeah.
and safe space building. And the shows are so much about being yourself and being welcome however you are. But then you're paying $800 to walk through the door.
Yeah, for a nosebleed seat. Yeah. Like, I already expected Harry Styles tickets prices without dynamic pricing, without COVID, just on a baseline. I'm like, I expect to pay more for that because of what I know that's going to be. However, getting into the pre-sale and seeing the cheapest seat before resale was $450 for the very last row in like Austin, like I'm in Austin. Then I was like, what? And then I go to like, you know, it was like at the Moody Center. And so I go to their Instagram just to see what people are saying in like the comments of like, what is everyone saying? And everyone's mad at the Moody Center. And I'm like, you guys think that they're not the ones who are making these prices. They have an agreement with Ticketmaster. Ticketmaster's dominating the prices. Because then dynamic pricing just goes, hey, when there's a high market demand, we're just gonna make those prices go up. And then it's like, that's shitty too. And then Ticketmaster's always getting like 25% of whatever comes from that. So I'm like, okay, they have every incentive to make these prices higher because then they get more in return. And I don't think like so many people don't know that.
That's one of the key points of this that's become really clear since Taylor's tour to me, because I wasn't so convinced this was the case with Harry fans, because a lot of people were drawing the miscommunication and lack of understanding to, well, it's been a while and the system's been updated and this is just a really in-demand show.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of that kind of messaging of like, it's fun, like this was just a one-off, and then it was Arctic Monkeys, and then it was 1975, and it just kept happening and happening and happening in these pocketed groups where you could say, well, it's the 1975 fans are just diehard, the Arctic Monkey fans are just diehard. Yeah. Okay, and then it's Taylor Swift with an average capacity of 55,000 tickets a show. And it's not just a niche group anymore, it's everybody.
Yeah.
And it really proves Ticketmaster thrives off of ambiguity and not having clear definitions and making you think that it's your fault for not understanding. The less that the fan understands about the experience, the better off Ticketmaster is at the end of the day. But what they underestimated is that Taylor Swift has trained her fan base from her first album, where she had those hidden messages inside the CD booklet. So when you bought the CD, you would be trying to decode the messages and all these Easter eggs. They completely underestimated that. This is a huge fan base that's been trained for over a decade to look into the details and read the fine print, because you never know what you're going to find. And I definitely don't think anyone on their team would have guessed that people would have been forming legal support groups in every state, completely fan run and organized letter writing campaigns. People like me that were comparing the press releases side by side and pointing out the changes and explaining what it would mean, and having that, you know, community knowledge share that made everyone understand just how collectively screwed we got in that experience. Yeah. But yet the data felt patronizing, because those graphs that they showed needed 2 paragraphs worth of context to be based in any reality. And you can make any graph spiky. Like, it's very easy to manipulate data, and they don't make data like that publicly available for like shows that go out, especially to the extent of ticket sales that Taylor's doing. So it's not like we've seen data points like that before that we could easily compare to. So you immediately have to trust it, which I will never immediately trust data points that come out in press releases like that. I want to see the background. Or
I'm like, you're trying to make me feel a certain way that I already know is a lie. Like, you're lying.
Right.
All you're doing is lying. Sorry.
And no. And they changed the graphs between the two statements. So in the first one, I'm having the side by side up here so I can read it. But the first one had a title that said Taylor Swift Demand was twice the top 5 tours in 2022 and the Super Bowl combined, and they took out that context in the second piece. So it's like, why can't you use your own comparable data points? Like, I'm really intrigued, like, why they can't name their own success levels, why they couldn't name like a property like the Super Bowl. So from the data perspective, that was really shocking to me that they would release something that was so ambiguous that would make it feel like, oh, well, we're smarter than you. Like, clearly, like, you don't know how to read a graph. Of course we know how to read graphs. Like, most Taylor Swift fans are now in their 20s, 30s, 40s. Yeah. We can read a graph or two.
Yeah, I got lower level seats for $45 each to Reputation. And like, I was in the presale and it was chill, and like no one like felt like they were like, you know, as she said, going through a bear attack to get those tickets. Yeah. So I'm like, what was that? I'm just like, me just trying to remember. I'm like, I don't, like, that wasn't powered through Ticketmaster then? Like, I have no idea.
So it was powered through Ticketmaster. There's a stat that I don't have on me, but there is a stat that showed that the percentage of tickets that ended up going to secondhand resellers or platinum because of that system is some extremely minute number. Like, that system worked in terms of getting face value tickets into the hands of fans and not bots. And then we never saw that system again for Taylor. And I don't know if we ever saw it to the same extent for other artists, certainly not Harry. It's something that I and a lot of fans are advocating for them to bring back for Beyonce, who is going to have a huge response for her upcoming tour. And she has so much content that you could input in that same kind of system to make sure the fans are getting to the front of the line and not the more, what's the word I'm looking for? The more, not like backseat fans, but casual fans, like casual listeners of Beyonce who would love to go. And you have lots of people, myself included, who are now saying, like, I don't know if I'm going to try for tickets to a show I would like to see if I'm not a diehard fan, because I would want to be in the queue for someone and take the spot away from my friend who's a more diehard fan. Or if I'm going to buy tickets, I'm going to do it to help someone who really wants to go more than maybe I do. Which I think is also a disappointing outcome of all of this. It's like actually discouraging people from wanting to try again.
Ideally, what would Ticketmaster be able to do, do you think, in between the Eras tour and whenever this Beyonce? Do you know when tickets, like, they haven't announced?
No, I thought it was also going to be like announced last week, this week. So I don't. And
I have like notifications turned on for every like the Renaissance tour. I'm like, right, know when these are happening.
All of like Beyonce's accounts on every platform are going to ding at the same time one day. Yeah. So there's a lot of speculation happening. I don't know what's happening with her tour. Like, this is purely conspiratorial at this point, but people are wondering if lots of artists are pausing until this gets moved or somewhat resolved. And if Taylor's kind of caused a shift in, you know, everyone knows they're not Taylor Swift. You can't compare apples and oranges, but you can compare how loud her fans are being with how loud your fans are capable of being. And everyone has data points that they can access around how many pre-saves their album had, how many downloads they had in their first week, their chart success, their monthly listeners that they can use to kind of speculate. Like, you could use your Spotify data alone to indicate, like, well, I have, you know, 500,000 daily listeners in LA, so the LA show is probably going to be a very hard show to get tickets for. And I'm sure there's lots of teams that are using the data points they do have access to beyond Ticketmaster to prepare themselves for what they're in for when they do go on sale. And they're looking at this example of someone at the highest end of the spectrum being Taylor's like wide ranging audience, global audience, willing to fly in for these shows and saying, okay, we need to be hands off until there's some kind of resolution for this. And if the resolution is there's no resolution, and if you want to have a concert next year, you have to get going now, then I'm sure you're going to see people pushing forward